And greetings. Welcome to the Evidence Reasons Academy. And I'm just kind of chilling out here on a Saturday afternoon. I call this show the Armchair Field Marshal. I'm just, I was in the aerospace and defense industry for 20 years. I was a scientist and engineer there. And Gangster Ghost, greetings. Chilo Gonzalez, greetings. And Gangster Ghost, greetings. There is that's a picture of an F-14 Tomcat, one of my favorite airplanes. It's a naval airplane. I wasn't planning on having a live stream. A open mic. If Aiden would want to talk to me sometime, he can email me. You can come on the side chat and we can arrange something. We could talk for a little bit. I did promise him, and I like to keep my promises. So Gangster Ghost, yes, that'd be fine. I hope you can hear me. Is my audio good? So this particular show is going to be about the Ukraine war a little bit, and kind of the weapons. We'll survey some of the weapons that are being used. I know it's kind of a grim and tragic thing that to be good at something you have to like military. If you're going to be good in military science, you have to sort of be fascinated by it, but it is kind of a grim industry. Chilo, it's great seeing you. Sometimes you drop into my kind of like the most boring stuff that I have. I hope you've enjoyed some of the videos that were pre-recorded, like the one of how I got on the cover of Nature. That was just like 22 minutes long. And then the one about the marriage, the Christian marriage proposal and testimony. Aiden, I did promise that we could talk. I didn't know how to get a hold of you. I was looking for your emails. I didn't see it. So you can try to email me again and we can try to work something out. I was trying to get something worked out. This show is going to be about military science, but maybe we could work something out because I did promise you and I wanted to follow through on my promise. If you can give me an email or something, do you have a public email that I could use? And Chila says she did enjoy those other ones. Okay, so just for your all's information, the Evidence Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel, and I'm going to give, just so that I make sure that you all get it, is this, here, let me put it in the chat, my other, oh, well, okay. Thank you for subscribing. Yes, that channel is, that's a little bit more script. I'm going to make that the more scripted channel, where the content there will be a little more polished. And it really is to encourage Christian believers. The academic channel is a little bit more of a wild frontier, a free-for-all, and just kind of my musings. It's not, doesn't have a lot of subscribers. I accidentally got like a couple hundred that were actually looking for the Ukraine war, and that really wasn't my intended audience. And I talk about economics and all sorts of crazy things. And I even did like a little do-it-yourself home renovation. So I'm going to cover the Ukraine war, and I might have a later show sometime to read a speech of Admiral Rickover. So you'll get definitely a whole range of things that are just kind of in my areas of interest as a human being. Have you ever talked to Wesley? There's a gentleman I knew by Wesley. He was on my show. If this is the same Wesley, he's a musician or a student of music near MIT up there in Massachusetts. So, all right. So let's talk about the Ukraine war. Where I stand on this, where I stand on the Ukraine war is I'm very sad that the war is taking place. I believe there are a lot of Russians that never even really wanted this war. They were lied to by Vladimir Putin and the power brokers in Russia. Like a lot of wars, the population is lied to by a greedy tyrant. And so sadly, the Russians had some motivation to invade Ukraine in violation of a treaty that they had signed that Ukraine would be independent. And so this is, Ukraine is rich in particular natural resources. It also has good naval ports. And this is just a power grab. And so lots of Russians are dying. They're Christians, Christian brothers and sisters on both sides of the conflict who are dying. Whoever wins, they're going to be Christians who will lose in this conflict. Unfortunately, Russia, I think, because they're led by a tyrant now, is, as a country, in the wrong. But I don't really blame the populace for this. It is the tyrants that bear the brunt of the responsibility for inciting this war and lying to their own people about the reasons why. Putin is using the Russian Orthodox, at least in name only, Christian church to justify the war. the church in Russia has been overtaken by Putin's security forces, and that's really scary. Like the former KGB, now what they call the FSB. It's like kind of like the counterpart to the secret police, the Gestapo in the Nazi times. It's terrible. And so they're co-opting God's church. Regarding this. I don't know if I know a certain Wesley Curry, by the way, Gangster Ghost. So that's my stand. I'm sorry for the war. Because Putin is behind Russia aggression into Ukraine, I think he needs to be repelled. Otherwise, he can just keep threatening the world with nuclear retaliation if they start to resist him. And that'll just incentivize him to keep doing more of the same and terrorizing people. There have just been horrible things that they're doing in Ukraine. He's now a wanted criminal because he's stealing and kidnapping tens of thousands of Ukrainian children. That's just unconscionable. So that's where I stand. As far as the United States' involvement, if you don't stop a bad guy and you just sit by, eventually he's going to start coming to your shores. He's going to start causing a lot of trouble for you. The Ukrainians are willing to fight this war and stop an aggressive, evil power. And all that America has to do is send a lot of their military equipment. They already have it. It's not even being used. And we could kind of cut down an adversary without losing a single American life. This just seems like a wise thing to do. Just give them what you have. They're willing to use it. They're willing to die fighting for their country and fighting the bad guys. Now, that being said, look what happened in World War II. When the tyrants were deposed, the countries that deposed the tyrants that were involved in the war became peaceful and valuable allies and great societies. So I'm hoping that Russia will somehow depose Putin and reform itself, and there'll be peace. Now, Jesus said there'll be wars and rumors of wars, and before the end times, it could get, before he returns, it could get really bad. But God calls us to pray in the epistles from Paul to Timothy, to pray for the government leaders so that we may live a peaceful and quiet life in all dignity, for this is pleasing in God's sight. So even though we know that this one day will end, and it will end kind of painfully before the Lord returns, we are still commanded to pray for peace on earth. So that being said, I got a funny buzz on my Samsung pad. And that was a funny noise. That was creepy. Anyway. So that being said, what are the losses in Ukraine right now? The Russians are losing lots of people. So let me share my screen. This is really sobering. They've lost almost 70,000 killed in action. 70,000 killed in action total right here. 169,890 estimated. I have seen footage of the battlefield, aerial photographs, just littered with Russian bodies. It was sickening. They're just lying there. There was even video footage, and you could see the guys right after they had charged across the field, and they were hit with artillery, and they're just mowed down, and some of them are still crawling, wounded, and they're going to just be left there to die. It was really sad. These are Russian soldiers. I mean, their tactics were just sending them to be butchered. It was horrible. And Putin and the military leaders just don't care about their own soldiers. It's a culture of just wasting people's lives for the tyrants. It's really, really, really sad. But if those Russian soldiers crossed the field and overtook Ukrainian towns, the amount of casualties to the civilians would be terrible. So you have to get the guys that are committing this, and it's really sad because they're forced to charge because the Ukrainians were wondering, why did these guys just charge through open fields and get mowed down? Well, the reason is Russia has dedicated some of their own army. Their job is to tell soldiers to go and charge the Ukrainian front lines, and if they don't, they're going to be shot. If they charge and then start running back, they're going to get shot by their own fellow soldiers. It's horrible. And in the Russian mercenary group, if you do something that's considered traitorous, they'll take a hammer and just beat you to death with it. It's just horrible. So the motivation is one of fear, and so these guys are just running across the field, getting slaughtered and mowed down, and that's why the casualty numbers are so high. They're the way they even treat their own is just terrible. So let me just go back to the numbers here. I want to, on the 24th of March, 4,080 casualties. And let me count how many that would have been. 168, 150 killed. That's about 1,020 in one day. So this is roughly, say, just for round figures, 1,000 killed every day. Over the next 30 days, we could expect maybe 30,000 more will die. To give an idea of the number of deaths here, the Americans, let me just verify this, World War II casualties. The number of killed, the United States military deaths was 416,000 in World War II. Russia is already almost half of that, and this is supposed to be a special military operation that's small. This is not going down very well for the Russians. So regarding the munitions I wanted to cover, let me bring this up. Hang on, let me just clean up a little bit here. On the left is a Russian T-55 tank. Now this is an old model, like Soviet Union era is in Stalin, like in the 1950s. On the left, right here. This is a modern British tank, and it's very similar to the modern American tank known as the M1 Abrams. And this is very sophisticated. It has this big gun and very good targeting system. Smart, the munitions don't miss. It's all computerized. It's incredible. It does not miss. And you could see this tiny little Russian tank. There are going to be these kinds of tanks on the Ukrainian side, and they're just going to blow these little guys away. I mean, this tank can fire from such a long distance that this guy will not have the range to hit him. And even if he fires, this tank has super armor. It's just going to bounce off. I mean, it's just like no contest. They can come down the road against each other, and this guy could be shooting at him, and the shells will just be bouncing off the tank, and he could just take one gun and just boom, one shot, and he's going to blow the other guy away. So this is a British Challenger tank. It's called a Challenger, and this is a T-55 for the Russians. So the Ukrainians are going to be getting tanks like this, the German Leopard tanks, and it's going to be awful for the Russians. Now, there is a let's see, just to give a map of Ukraine, there is this map of Ukraine, and so this is the area that's okay. So Ukraine is about this area here. I don't know if you could see my cursor. You could barely see the border here. This is Ukraine, like that. This is Ukraine, and this part is this part that's highlighted in orange is orange and purple. That's the area currently occupied by the Russians. So they're not occupying, the Russians are occupying maybe, say, 20% of Ukraine, maybe a little bit less. And the Ukrainians are preparing to try to push all the Russians out of this area. And the area of interest right now where there's a hot spot is in the city of Bakhmut. See if I could find it. There, yeah, right here. Bakhmut. And they're so the little boxes here in red and the arrows are the Russian forces, and the Ukrainians are opposing them, and they're massing a lot of forces here to do what they call a counterattack. And one way that they're able to destroy the enemy is dropping big bombs on them. And the bomb system that is of interest that I wanted to talk about today, see if I could find it. Oh, that's Rick over. That's another show. The bomb system is this JDAM, Joint Direct Attack Munition. So let me show some pictures of it. I mean, these are bad boys for sure. So there are a variety. Okay, this is what they look like. These are Joint Direct Attack Munitions. They're basically bombs that are smart bombs that got created by taking a dumb bomb and putting on a tail fins, steerable tail fins, and in some cases wings. So let me see if they can. Anyway, these things are gigantic. 2,000 pounds. Some of them are 2,000 pounds. They're big, and let's see if we have a picture of it on an airplane. So yeah, you could see the size, just the size of these bombs. And they're going to load it there. This is a looks like a F. It's either a Raptor or a F-35. I can't. If it's a single engine, it's a F-35. So this bomb here will fly. It's GPS guided, and you can punch in a coordinate, and the bomb will not miss. It'll use GPS. The fins will steer it, and it will land very precisely. Now there are certain ones that have wings on them. Oh, this is another picture of it dropping. The Joint Direct Attack Munition. It's 2,000 pounds. I mean, the big one is 2,000 pounds. So let's just read the Wikipedia article. The Joint Direct Attack Munition, the JDAM, is a guidance kit that converts unguided bombs or dumb bombs into all-weather precision-guided munitions. JDAM-equipped bombs are guided by an integrated inertial guidance system coupled to a global positioning system receiver. giving them a published range of up to 15 nautical miles, or 28 kilometers. JDAM equipped bombs range from 500 to 2,000 pounds, 230 to 910 kilograms. The JDAM's guidance system was jointly developed by the United States Air Force and the United States Navy, hence the joint in JDAM. When installed on a bomb, the JDAM kit is given a GBU, Guided Bomb Unit Identifier. So that's what GBU stands for, Guided Bomb Unit Identifier, superseding the Mark 80 or BLU Bomb Live Unit nomenclature of the bomb to which it is attached. JDAM is not a standalone weapon. Rather, it is a bolt-on guidance package that converts unguided gravity bombs into precision-guided munitions, a PGM. The key components of the system consist of a tail section with aerodynamic controls, surfaces, a body, strake kit. It's a strake. A strake is an aerodynamic surface generally mounted on the fuselage of an aircraft to improve the flight characteristics either by controlling airflow or by a simple stabilizing effect. And combined inertial guidance system and GPS guidance control unit. The JDAM was meant to improve upon laser-guided bomb and imaging infrared technology, which can be hindered by bad ground and weather conditions. Laser seekers are now being fitted to some JDAMs. From 1998 to November 2016, Boeing completed more than 300,000 JDAM kits. In 2017, it built more than 130 kits per day. As of February 2020, 430,000 kits have been produced. Oh my. The United States has had 430,000 of these. The poor Ukrainians, they've only allotted two of their 400,000. The U.S. can easily afford to give 1,000 of these. They won't even feel it. So a JDAM kit. Let me see if I could get a picture of a JDAM kit. I have to look for what the kit looks like. Okay, maybe this is... I'm going to show a picture of the JDAM kit. Let's see if I could find another one. If they actually just show the kit, then I'll show the JDAM ER. Okay, so the original, so you see in the yellow here, that's kind of like a regular bomb. That's, kind of the guts of a regular bomb here. And what you can do is you could take this bomb. So a lot of the bombs, I guess, have kind of these places where you could screw on the fins for the bomb or whatever. So a JDAM kit, it says JDAM tail kit. JDAM is a tail kit for dumb bombs that provides actuated fins, which I think this is what these are, guidance and control software, GPS and INS, which is inertial navigation system navigation, strakes to improve aerodynamics. So you have basically the bomb here, and then when you put a JDAM kit and attach it, it becomes a JDAM. And you can add various size bombs. So this is amazing that they figured out. So this is relatively cheap. This, the kit, relatively as in DOD dollars. The kit retails for about $25,000. A 2,000 pounder retails for about another $25,000. So for $50,000 you get this really accurate bomb, and it's a 2,000 pounder. The kill radius, the guaranteed kill radius, is around, I mean, the guaranteed kill radius is what, 35, a radius of about 35 meters. Anything within 35 meters and you're dead. It can cause serious injury up to 350 meters, a radius. Let me just double check that. Kill radius of a GBU 31. The fragmentation pattern of a 2,000 pound Mark 84 bomb are difficult to predict, but it is generally said this weapon has a lethal radius, which is the distance in which it is likely to kill people in the vicinity, is up to 360 meters. But the guaranteed, I think, is like 10% of that. It's whew. The lethal radius. So I've seen, I mean, this is you don't want to be anywhere near where this baby drops. It doesn't have to be very precise. These JDAMs can hit within meters. So if you dial in your GPS coordinates, it's going to hit within meters of that point that you specified. And let's just say that anything within a radius of 350, I'm just going to use the figure 350 meters. That's like 3 football fields. You do not want to be near it. So you got, if it's a radius of 350 meters, that means you could be, people that are separated by about 700 meters apart. If it drops in between them, it can take out both of them. 750 meters, that's that's 3/4 of a kilometer. I mean 700, that's 70, 0.7 kilometers, which is big. So if the JDAM is dropped, they have an extended kit here. Let me talk about it. Let's see. I'm going to show this. They have so this kit with just the tail fins has a range of what, 15 nautical miles? Was that what it said? Did I recall that correctly? All right. And we'll look at the numbers, but then they have this other one called the JDAM ER. So they decided, in addition to just the tail fins, they're not going to put these wings. So you take a dumb bomb and then you attach this kit, and now it can even fly. And this is really cool. Is that like a jet? Goodness. JDAM ER. Yeah, so this is what a JDAM ER looks like. Oh goodness. And it's a flying bomb. It's a flying bomb. So what'll happen is it gets underneath, like, oh boy, they're even advertising this duel. Oops, sorry. So what'll happen is, see, the wings are kind of they swivel. So when it's loaded on the airplane, the wings aren't extended. Once it drops it, the wings extend, and then it can fly. And it says the JDAM ER versus Russian surface-to-air missiles, Russian SAMs. That's going to be interesting. Now the JDAM ER has a range of what, 70 kilometers? So let's just see what the range of JDAM ER. 72 kilometers, 45 miles. And a regular JDAMs has a range okay, so this is it. So the first one says, Wikipedia says JDAM has a range of 15 nautical miles or 28 kilometers. But the extended range, the wing kit will triple the range of JDAM to 80 kilometers or 50 miles for the same accuracy and will cost $10,000 per unit. Wow, only $10,000. Get yours while supplies last. It can deliver 2,000. It attaches to a 2,000-pound bomb. So now, guys, the United States has 430,000 of these, or has made them and given it, sold it to the Allies. That's a huge number. And poor Ukraine, it's been released that maybe they just have a couple of these. I mean, with a $10,000 ER kit to that 2,000-pounder, which costs $25,000, that's $35,000 per bomb. So now let's say, okay, I'm going to play Armchair Field Marshal here. I'm going to do some back of the envelope calculations. Let me do that. One moment. I'm going to do some back of the envelope calculations. So for $35,000, if you had 1,000 of these, that costs $35 million. The United States is sending 60, or maybe $70 billion of aid to Ukraine this year. 70 billion. Now, if you had 1,000 JDAMs, in each JDAM, 2,000 pound, a 2,000 pound JDAM is a ton. 1,000 would be 1 kiloton. Now, just to give you the figures, the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were measured in kilotons. So the one dropped on Hiroshima was 20 kilotons. So $35 million. For $750 million, you've got the equivalent of a nuclear weapon, at least in terms of explosive power. You just have to figure out how to deliver it. And, I mean, this is going to be savage that you have basically nuclear, using chemical power to compete with, nuclear level lethality. This could be really savage. So let me just do a back of the envelope calculation. So, and I'm going to use a square rather than circular approximation for the blast. Because it makes the calculation. This is an approximation, and I don't think I need to be too anal. So 0.7 times .7. So basically half a square kilometer. So 1,000. So if we multiply 1,000 times that, that's 490 square kilometers. For $35 million, you could wipe out 490 square kilometers. So let me do square root. This is an area 22 by 22. You could wipe out an entire army like this. Now the trick is you would need an airplane. You'll need an airplane about that size to be delivering some of these. See that one? That's the F-14 Tomcat. But that's about the size of some of the airplanes that are capable of delivering this. Remember, the let me see, the payload. The payload of a MiG-29. So Ukraine has lots of MiG-29s. And let's see. The payload capacity of a MiG-29 is 5,500 kilograms. It can carry barely 4 bombs. 4 of these bombs. So 250 sorties you could deliver this. That can be done if you have an air force of 10. If you have 10 MiG-29s dedicated to this task, and assuming they don't get shot down, they need to fly 10 missions, what they call sorties. 10 sorties each. They could deliver this. They'd be able to. So you just punch in the GPS coordinates, you get them to fly up there. They're 50 nautical miles away. They drop their bombs, they turn around. They don't even have to get over enemy territory. They could just level the enemy. It's going to be brutal. The problem in the Iran-Iraq war was, not Iran, the United States versus Iraq, or United States versus Afghanistan. There was a lot of the bad guys kind of integrated themselves into the civilian population. Now, some of these war-torn cities, the civilians have evacuated, and the Russians are just sitting there. And like in the city of Bakhmut. And so, hypothetically, people have said the JDAM could actually change the game if they're given in sufficient quantities. Because all you have to do is you don't have to bring in tanks and infantry and whatever to start fighting the Russians. You just kind of contain them where they are. You send out these airplanes with the JDAMs, and the JDAMs are just going to level. It's just going to level wherever the opponents are. You can cover an area of 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers. Anything in there is just going to be. It's going to be a meat grinder. And yet the United States and the Allies are reluctant to give. They're only giving a couple JDAMs to the Ukrainians. I guess they gave them as a test. But you see, this is the sort of thing in modern warfare. You don't want to sacrifice your own people if you don't have to. People are, in modern warfare, your own soldiers are gold. They're valuable. You do not want to sacrifice them. You'd rather sacrifice machines and ammunition because they're not living things. In the Gulf Wars, I have to feel kind of sorry for the vanquished opponents. In the first Gulf War with the United States had 300 deaths, something like that. But most of them were either due primarily to non-combat related, like car accidents. It happens, because military operations are dangerous even in practice. And then also friendly fire. So the Americans lost very few. They inflicted tens of thousands of deaths and casualties upon the enemy. When let me give you a figure here. Let's see. Number of Iraqi tanks lost. Desert Storm. The number of Iraqi tanks. U.S. and Allied forces destroyed over 3,000 tanks in the first Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. U.S. Okay, this is from the historyarmy.mil, so that's an official government website. U.S. and Allied forces destroyed over 3,000 tanks, 1,400 armored personnel carriers, and 2,200 artillery pieces. Okay, how many M1 Abrams tanks did the United States lose in Desert Storm? 0. They won 3,000 to 0, so to speak. That's not exactly accurate because you had these A-10 tank killers. You had the Abrams, it's called the M2 Abrams infantry fighting vehicles. They slaughtered a lot of American tanks. These are fighting vehicles. They're not heavily armored. They have these anti-tank missiles on them, and they're just blowing away Iraqi tanks. I mean, modern warfare, when you have the machines, it's just slaughter the opponent if you have the technological advantage. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this. I mean, we thought that in World War II, the Germans had just tremendous ability with their tanks, but that's nothing compared to the Americans versus the Saddam Hussein's tank force in Desert Storm. I mean, destroying 3,000 tanks and you haven't lost a single of your own. That's just unthinkable. How'd you like to win a game 3,000 to nothing? I mean, wow. So what am I saying here? You have these JDAM bombs that are precise. You don't need to be charging these trenches. In old World War I style, you'd have this army attacking an entrenched enemy, and they'd be charging their infantry and getting just mowed down. And just through willpower, you'd be able to overpower them. A well-entrenched enemy. You don't do that in modern warfare now. So, I'm playing armchair field marshal here. So you see all these lines of trenches that the Russians have dug. This is old-style warfare, old-style World War I, even American Civil War warfare. The Union Army, Ulysses Simpson Grant, used a lot of trench warfare. It was the beginning of it, trench warfare. And then it was copied in World War I. That was World War I era tactics. It doesn't work too well. It started to fall apart in World War II, and in modern day, don't even think about it. Because you have these JDAM bombs. I saw film, it was horrific, where a drone was attacking a trench. It flew high. It's a really tiny target, so you can barely see it, but it can drop a grenade into a trench, and so you don't lose personnel. You might lose a drone, but it's really hard to see in the sky when it's flying high. And if it has thermal imaging, you're not going to see it if you don't have thermal imaging, and it's just going to come over you at night. And it's while you're all laid down in the trench asleep, it's going to drop a grenade there. But even worse, I've saw some of these precision attacks where the drone and satellite image knows where the trench is. It has a GPS coordinate on you. It just has to establish you, the bad guy, or the bad guy is there. So you send the drone, it knows the GPS coordinates. You call in artillery, it's gone. Or you send up a JDAM mission, and that trench is going to be annihilated. There's just going to be a crater there, and you drop. Okay, so the kill the kill zone is up to 700 meters here between 2 points. You drop 10 of these, you've breached the whole line. You may not have any opposition. You just kind of need to clear out the landmines. This is. You're going to breach the with. Okay, let's say that. Let's be conservative. Let's say you only get 100 meters between the bombs. You drop them. You drop 10 of these. That's an entire kilometer. You can plow right through that. You drop 20. That's an entire 2 kilometers. And just for comparison, when we go to deep state map, okay, let's look at deep state map here. I'm going to go to deep state map here. Oh, Joseph Tim Merriman, thank you for joining. So, let's look at the distance here of the Ukrainians. They are trying to defend this area. See, they're dwelling in this 3 kilometer area here. If the Russians squeeze them, they could be trapped, they could be eliminated, and they're fighting for their life here. But I'm just pointing this out to say, a kilometer is a large amount of area in the battlefield. That's a large battlefield area. In fact, by way of comparison, let me look this up. The battlefield of Waterloo was the length of the front of the battlefield of Waterloo was 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers. So in the Battle of Waterloo, see if we have pictures of the Battle of Waterloo. Famous Battle of Waterloo in Europe. See if I have a picture. Waterloo Battle movie. Yeah, okay. So this is a picture of the Battle of Waterloo, a reenactment, obviously. And at most, the length of this line is 4 kilometers. In some cases, it's less than that. But you can imagine a JDAM bomb hitting a formation here and it's gone. I mean, it would not take a lot of them to annihilate and just clear it out. So in the present battle out there, particularly in the city of Bakhmut, if the Ukrainians had enough JDAMs, you don't need to engage the enemy. We call it standoff weapons. You just fight from a distance, and it's not very sporting, really. It's pretty cruel. And Napoleon said, before cannon, all men are equal. So before JDAMs, all men are equal. Doesn't matter how courageous or you are, you're going to be taken out. And so this is kind of my armchair musing that these very cheap weapons that the Americans and allies could give Ukraine, they've chosen not to. And it's like, do you really want to win the war? You know, these aren't really sophisticated. They're not, you know, they have a sophisticated component in that you have GPS and just giving kind of tail fins to guide your bomb to a precise. I mean, there's computation there, but it's only like a $10,000 system for each bomb to give it this superb guidance. Now you do have to integrate that into the airplane, because the airplane will fly along, and it has these targeting computers that will tell it, hey, okay, steer here, fly here, and as you fly there, you enable you either press the trigger or you set it up, and the airplane will automatically release the bomb for you. It's not like it says shoot now and you squeeze the trigger. No, either your trigger is squeezed, it's committed, and as soon as the airplane is in an optimal envelope, it's just going to automatically drop the bomb. Because I built small scale flight simulators, I kind of know the general procedure of this. You're just there holding the trigger. It's telling you not to commit, and the computer will figure out exactly the millisecond it needs to do the release. It's incredible. So you just have to have the airplane come up there, drop the bomb from a very long distance. Well, 50 miles isn't that long, but it's a good distance. You're going to be out of range of the small shoulder-fired missiles. So you're going to be far at that point. What you have to worry about is the high-altitude surface-to-air missiles that the Russians will be firing at you. So that leads to the final component in all this, the HARM missile, the high-speed anti-radiation missile. So the tactic is and for those of you who like the website, the YouTube channel Growling Sidewinder, there are these HARM missions. I'm trying to find a diagram of what a The Operations Room, by the way, is also a great website. It's one of my favorite YouTube channels. So Sam, okay, so let's see, Iron Hand. I'm Googling here, Sam radar site destruction. All right, so maybe I'm just going to show some pictures here. We have, like, say, this is, I'm going to show a picture here. This is a surface-to-air battery. So these missiles are meant to fly up into the air and take down an airplane. And it's near there are, I believe this dome here is radar. I think this is an Israeli system. There's also, let me show what the Russians have lots of. I'll show you what the Russians have lots of in a moment. Let's call it the S400. The S400 system. So the S400 system so you have this thing called the S400 by the Russians. Ooh. See if I can make this smaller. So you have a S400 system. Let me get my picture out of there. This S400 system, it has these missiles here, and it's on these trucks. And there are radar systems that will identify the airplanes. Now these are either F-35s or F-22 Raptors. they don't really work on stealth aircraft. But so say that you're up there and you're Ukrainian trying to fly and drop a JDAM on the Russians. The Russians have these surface-to-air missile batteries. They're going to shoot at you, and they're very good. They're very, very deadly. So what to do is you send up another airplane, and these are called like Iron Hand missions, and see if there's a picture of it. Trying to see if they have one here. I love diagrams because it makes it clear. Okay, so we have this missile called an AGM-88, which we've given the Ukrainians. And I actually worked with the AGM-88 in flight simulators to train A6 crews in how to use the HARM missile when they're firing other ordnance like the Harpoon or standoff land attack missile. It's good to have a HARM missile along the way. So if the bad guys are shooting at you, and it's kind of really gutsy, you actually hope that they lock onto you, because that means they're transmitting radar. And then that radar signal that's transmitted by let's say in this case the Russians, it's bouncing off the airplane. In this case it won't bounce. Just imagine it's a non-stealth airplane. It's going to bounce off the airplane, and then as it bounces off the airplane, then the missile will be using that radar signal somehow to direct its attack to go after the target. I don't know how, I may get some of the fine details of this a little off, but that's the general idea. So while that missile is flying, the radar on the ground has to be radiating a lot of electromagnetic energy so the missile can find its target, so it basically can see it. And hang on. I just want to make sure. So there are these things called illuminator radars. Illuminator radars, just to give a lot of illumination in the electromagnetic spectrum. Just wanted to make sure it's public knowledge because I didn't want to say something that's classified. So there are things called illuminators. And so what you want to do, let me see, illuminator. Okay, I'm looking at this, the surface-to-air missile. One of them's called the SA-6. Each battery consists of a number of similar tracked vehicles, one of which carries the 1S91 25 kilowatt GH band radar, range 75 kilometers or 47 miles, equipped with a continuous wave illuminator. So it's pouring out tons of electromagnetic energy. This is like a big searchlight, but in the radar spectrum, and just dumping this electromagnetic energy. So what you do is you fly another airplane that has a HARM missile. Now, in the simulations I had worked with, that I was training pilots with, the pilot would have the bombs or harpoon missiles or standoff land attack missiles, as well as the high-speed anti-radiation missile. It seems that typically now you want specialists. You want the guys flying high just to carry the ordnance, and the guys flying low or in a variety of altitudes to carry the high-speed anti-radiation missiles. So let's say you come in flying high with your bombs, and the Russians launch a missile at you. You have the guys flying at kind of the lower altitudes. They see that the radars are illuminating, and they'll fire a high-speed missile. The reason it's high speed is you want it to fly, and before this missile hits you, you want your friendly missile to knock out their radar, and then this missile goes unguided. You've wiped it out, and you're able to drop your bomb. Another way of doing this is you just go around. You have to have a lot of guts to do this. You go around in what they call, an F-18 pilot told me this that I worked with, and we went to Kuwait, and he's telling kind of the tactics. He said, well, you could just go around in self-protect mode. You have this mode on an airplane. You carry all these high-speed anti-radiation missiles, and you fly and you deliberately incite the enemy to turn on his radar. Once he turns on his radar, you fire the high-speed anti-radiation missile, the HARM, and it will actually use the enemy's own signal, and it'll just ride that beam all the way down to the radar tower or the radar dish. It's going to wipe it out. Now, it's not 100% effective, so you might have to fire a few of these to take them out. And you have to have a lot of guts to be doing that, because you're counting on the fact, one, that your missile is going to work and it's going to take them out. Even if it's flying, it has to hit it accurately and explode in such a way as it causes sufficient damage. Sometimes, if you've ever seen like a radar tower, some of these like like a radio tower, you're like, how can you take that out unless you hit the foundation? If you just detonate an explosion around the tower, it won't necessarily take it out, because it's just the tower is just mostly made of nothing. This is what I mean. So let's see. So we actually did have radar towers in the Battle of Britain, not radar dishes. So let me just show you a picture. So in the Battle of Britain, you just basically had what looked like radio towers, but they were actually part of a radar system. So if you get an explosion there, you won't necessarily take the tower out, because most of it's made of air. So, all this to say, a HARM missile is not 100% effective, but at some point it's going to start to destroy the enemy's system. You keep hitting it with these HARM missiles. And once you've wiped out their surface-to-air assets, then you're clear to go in, because conversely, the Russians don't want to fly their fighter jets into Ukraine and engage the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians have very good surface-to-air assets, and they're able to fire missiles up, and the Russians just do not want to fly there. The days of airplanes dogfighting, those are largely over. A lot of the fights happen at very long distance, and it's with these smart missiles and then also surface-to-air missiles. And the Russians do not want to fly into Ukraine airspace and take on the Ukrainians. So let's look at the map here. Playing Armchair Field Marshal again. So this is the Russian, hang on, I'm sorry. Turn this off. This is the Russian border. Okay, so to the right of these of the red and purple is Russia. This is all Russia here. And the purple area is the Ukraine that's occupied, part of Ukraine that's occupied by the Russians. And then to the left is the Ukraine that's unoccupied. So the Russians do not want to fly into this area because the Ukrainians have surface-to-air missiles systems up here, and it'll take out the Russians. The Russians don't have very good high anti-radar capability, or what we call anti-radiation missile capability. They haven't been able to wipe out the Ukrainian surface-to-air assets, systems. So it's well intact. The Russians will maybe take off from airfields here. They'll fly, kind of near the Russian border or just slightly over it, but they don't want to get anywhere near this area because the surface air missiles have a long range. So let's see how far. Do they have airfields here? Let's see. Okay, these Marinovka and Morovsk. Okay, so these are Milarovo airfield, partially damaged following a Ukrainian Tochka U strike in early March. Whoa! What's Tochka? That's a big missile. So let's see. I'm just trying to do a little armchair field marshal here. So if oops, that's not what I wanted. If I were the Russians and I wanted to fly a mission, so the Ukrainian front line is here. So I think Bakhmut is here. And so that's about 80 kilometers. Now let me just check. Was that? Yeah, that is Bakhmut. All right, so you have your Ukrainian airplanes come from the left. They can drop their bomb here and it will land here where the Russians are. Conversely, the Russians really don't want to cross into this airspace because the Ukrainians can shoot it down. Let's see the range of S-300. "400 kilometers. Different versions of the MPO Novator 9M82MD S-300 V4 missiles have a range of 400 kilometers at 7.5 Mach, or a range of 350 kilometers at Mach 9. Wow! And can destroy maneuvering targets even at very high altitude. An expert version exists marketed as the Ante 4000. Okay, so let's just say 350 kilometers. That is huge. So this is from Druskivka. So Druskivka to Bakhmut is the range of the JDAM, and holy smokes, Drushkivka. All right, so now where would I position, if I were the Russians, where would I position optimally from Bakhmut? I mean, 400 kilometers. Holy moly. So Drushkivka, and let's go back 350 kilometers. Holy moly. So the Russians can put their surface-to-air missiles here, and they could fire if they're trying to get an airplane that's flying here. But there is a problem. If the airplane is coming here, they're going to have to launch their missile early. To intercept it. It's going to take time when they launch it. This guy flies. They'll have to decide at some point, am I going to fire? Am I going to fire? If he fires, wow, I see a problem here. If he fires that surface-to-air missile, he's gonna start turning on his radar, and it's going to be difficult for a Ukrainian. I know offhand the HARM missile has a range of maximum of 140 kilometers in what they call pre-brief mode. So range 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers. So for him to wipe out this, he's going to have to fly the airplane a long range, and wow, that's going to be hard. Now the thing is, if this is stationary, you can hit it with all sorts of missiles. Okay, so this is telling me a lot here. So the main danger of the Ukrainians is that when they're flying around here, some base deep in Russia can be firing anti-aircraft missiles, or really the proper term is surface-to-air missiles. But let me just call them anti-aircraft missiles from a long range. And yeah, he could turn around and fly. But remember, this thing is going at Mach 9, and you're not even at Mach 1. It's going to catch up to you. And what you have to do is you fly high, fire a missile, and you just dive for the ground and hide and hope you can't be seen. Now, the nice thing is if there are illuminators here, so the launcher may be back here. The radar illuminators might be in this area. So you fly high, and then you have the HARM guys, the weasels coming in low, waiting for the Russians to turn on the radar in this area, and then you can start shooting down the radars, shooting up the radars on the ground. And then once you wipe them out, it'll take a while to replace them. Then you can have free range just bombing in this area. Yeah, that's how to do it. It's been confirmed. Some brave soul for the Ukrainian Air Force already tested the JDAM. That meant he felt he could get up high at proper altitudes, drop this extended range, this JDAM, either extended range or not, and maybe, after he dropped it, it's pretty bad. in my own stream if I'm making myself go to sleep, much less the audience. You could fly at high altitude, drop your JDAM, then fly toward the deck, as they say, hit the deck, you fly down, and you're out. You try to fly under the radar, and then the S-300 missiles, S-300 or S-400 anti-aircraft or surface-to-air missiles can't hit you. And so this tactic has already been rehearsed in practice. And I think the Ukrainians are steadily trying to go and start to knock down all of these surface-to-air radar sites and illuminator sites in this area. I don't know how close you have to be, but you have to be pretty close to have the radar effective, because when you have high precise targeting radar, it has to be coming up close. Your detection radar can be from far away, but it's not accurate enough to generate signals that you can to drive a surface-to-air missile at you at an airplane. So probably what they're going to have to do is the Ukrainians hopefully will start to wipe out these illuminator radars, by flying all these missions, maybe to actually kind of incite them to turn on their illuminator radars. Then you fire these high-speed anti-radiation missiles. I have a picture of that. Do I have a picture of harm? Yeah. You fire these missiles air to ground, okay, and take out those radar sites. So let me just read this. The AGM-88 harm high-speed anti-radiation missile air-to-ground punch against hostile air defense. The AGM-88 harm is a tactical air-to-surface anti-radiation missile designed to home in on electronic transmissions coming from surface-to-air radar systems. It can detect, attack, and destroy air defense radars with minimal shooter inputs. I know that for a fact. If you have a GPS coordinate on it, it's really easy. The proportional guidance system homes in on enemy radar emissions. It uses a fixed antenna and seeker head in the missile's nose. Passive radar homing with home on jam, GPS and internal navigation can detect targets even if they move or turn off their transmitters. Whoa. That's pretty incredible. So it's 13.5 inches tall, 4.1 meters. A solid rocket propellant booster and sustainer rocket propels the missile at speeds over Mach 2. 66 kilograms, 146 pounds explosive payload in a WDU-21/B blast fragmentation warhead. It has these pre-shaped cubes when it explodes. So when they say these fragmentation warhead. And this is that's a beautiful looking missile. Look at that baby. That is a beautiful looking missile. And yeah, these are like radar sites it can attack. See what this is. Yeah, it can attack these radar sites. So harm missiles from Desert Storm to Donetsk. So this is the S-300 deployment diagram. That's what I wanted. And the harm is supposed to be able to wipe this truck out right here. Yeah. It's even better if it can get to the rate, to something like that. I don't know that it can do that. But you can disable it, the whole system, by wiping out its radar. That's called an RL-76 November 6 N6. 76 N6. In August 2022, U.S. defense officials confirmed open source intelligence sightings that the Ukrainian Air Force has been using AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missiles launched from Ukrainian aircraft. The confirmation raised questions regarding the compatibility between Western munitions and Ukraine's ex-Soviet air fleet. The news also added to the ongoing discussion regarding the air domain in Ukraine. In particular, the conduct of said and dead suppression of air defense and destruction of air defense missions by both sides. Despite possessing a substantial qualitative and quantitative advantage on paper, the Russian Air Force, known as the VKS, has been unable to establish air dominance in Ukraine. This is likely related to the Russians' inability to conduct effective said-dead operations, linked to factors including the high mobility of Ukraine air defenses, including the S-300, SA-11s, and SA-8 units, effective intelligence, poor Russian training, and the supply-capable Western man-portable air defense systems, MANPADS. Ukraine's use of AGM-88 munitions underscores this Russian failure, demonstrating that the Ukrainian Air Force is still capable of contesting the airspace in Ukraine and limiting Russian aviation. Finally, these systems are connected to an automated command post, ADCP. Automated ADCP. Why don't they call it ACP? Oh, I don't know. This is like reading biology. In order to understand the use of HARM missiles in Ukraine and the topic of said dead more generally, it is first necessary to understand the anatomy of an anti-air capabilities on both sides in Ukraine. Broadly speaking, surface-to-air missile SAM systems operate by detecting incoming aerial threats using radar and then engaging these threats, most commonly with missiles. It must be understood that the longest range SAMs, such as the S-300, are not individual units. They are instead a complex of systems, each performing a specific role. For example, Figure 1 shows the constituent units of a S-300 PMU. The I don't know what a PMU is. SA-10 Grumble. The chart shows that within each S-300 unit there are 4 83P6 fire units, the OK83P61, the OK83P62, 3 and 4. These fire units are each comprised of a 5P85 SE TEL transporter erector launcher and two 5P85D ETELs transporter erector launcher TELs. They are all linked to 3 separate radar units, a 30N6-1 flap lid B engagement radar and ST68UM tin shield and 76N6 clamshell acquisition radars. You have an engagement and then acquisition radar located within 120, 250, and 500 meters of the fire units respectively. Broadly, acquisition radars are used to initially detect incoming threats, whilst the engagement radars tracks the threat and provides the data necessary for the launchers to interdict the threat. Okay. So tin shield and clamshell they're located pretty close to the fire units. All right. Finally, these systems are connected to an automated command post, ADCP, in this case the 5S99-M SENES-M or 5N3773N6 Baikal, which coordinates and distributes data from other units and generally controls the complex. There is a great variety among S-300 systems regarding the exact specifications of the constituent units, and not all SAM units are comprised in the same way. For example, the TOR Low Altitude Short Range SAM system uses a TLAR, transporter, launcher, and radar design, in which radar and launcher are incorporated onto a single-track vehicle bed. The trade-off with this design is the detection engagement ranges are dramatically reduced. This is relevant in Ukraine for the use of the AGM-88 HARMs, as they function by detecting and homing in on the source of active radar emissions. The missile can be deployed in several launch modes, with the modes being differentiated by whether the missile has a specified target prior to launch and at a range in which the target is engaged. When used in dedicated SED aircraft, such as the U.S. Wild Weasel F-16, HARMs are typically launched in pre-brief mode. In this mode, the aircraft sensors detect a target and download this data to the missile prior to launch. This mode grants the greatest standoff range for attacks on emitters of a known type and location, is therefore best option for dedicated said dead aircraft. In other launch modes, the missile's onboard sensors rather than the aircraft's can acquire a target before launch or be launched defensively and prosecute targets acquired after launch at close range. Can acquire a target before launch or be launched defensively and prosecute targets after launch at close range. Okay, in other aircraft launch modes, the missile's onboard sensors rather than the aircraft's can acquire a target and launch or be launched defensive or prosecute targets acquired after launch at close range. Oh yes, it brings back memories. So there's a self-protect mode. There is self-protect pullback. There is target of opportunity. It's been so long. So you have the HARM missile in pre-brief mode. Then you can have it, the seeker. You can use actually the missile's electronics to look at the bad guys. You don't use the aircraft's electronics. Self-protect. Let's see. These are old terms. Okay, so the missile has 3 operational modes. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia. You have target of opportunity. Has 3 operational modes: pre-brief, target of opportunity, and self-protect. Okay, so there are self-protect pullback modes. You enable self-protect. Okay, the self-protect mode. It's been a while. I used to work on the integrated missile panel. Okay, so there is one article here, how Ukraine could have quickly put the AGM anti-radiation missiles to use. So they said this is how the weapon would likely be used. Oh man, I gotta get this. I gotta show this picture. How Ukraine could put AGM. Let me show, this is a great article. This talks about the self-protect mode. How Ukraine could have quickly put AGM-88 anti-radiation missiles to use. With wreckage of the radar-killing AGM-88 HARM missile appearing in Ukraine, here's how the weapon would likely be used. Oh, this is beautiful. Look at this beautiful missile. That's the HARM, the AGM-88. Isn't she just gorgeous? She's beautiful. Man. What a beautiful missile. And I don't know what kind of missile this is. That's a different kind. Hard to say. Someone would recognize it, but this HARM is beautiful. The AGM-88. Just let me stare at it a little longer. Oh, man. While the United States has so far only confirmed that unspecified air-launched anti-radiation missiles have been transferred to Ukraine for its war with Russia, the apparent remains of an AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missile, or HARM, said to have been fired recently at a Russian position, suggests strongly that this is the weapon, or one of the weapons involved. With that in mind, it's worth looking into more detail how this trademark Western radar killer works and how it might be put to use by the Ukrainian Air Force in particular. Look at that. There's that AGM-88. Beautiful. Anti-radiation missiles, or ARMs, like the AGM-88, home in on enemy radio frequency emissions, particularly from radar arrays belonging to enemy air defense systems, and destroy or disable them. They're a critical tool for not only breaking down the door through an enemy's air defenses, but also for providing self-protection to aircraft that carry them and the aircraft they may be escorting. Okay, so they have some history of this. Okay, so the Air Force AGM Shrike missile carried by the F-16G, 105G, Thunder Chief during the World War in Southeast Asia. Just behind him is the AGM-78 Standard missile. So that's the Shrike. And then the bigger one is the Standard Arm. And then the HARM missile is very close to this, to the AGM-88. The following on the AGM Standard Arm developed from a naval surface-to-air missile was somewhat more sophisticated, with later versions having a simple memory circuit. This allowed it to continue flying toward its target even after the emitter shut down. The downside of the AGM-78 was its prodigious size and cost. Entering the service in the mid-1980s, the AGM-88 introduced new features like a reprogrammable broadband seeker head for increased versatility, as well as blast fragmentation warhead. That in later models was made up of tungsten alloy cubes that increased the odds of achieving a kinetic kill on targets, and especially its antenna. As the name suggests, it stressed speed, using its velocity to increase the chances of hitting the enemy transmitter before its operators were able to take it offline. Once locked on, the missile seeker stores the hostile radar position in its memory so it can still continue to prosecute the target, even if the enemy shuts the radar down intermittently. With HARM bearing down on its target at a speed of more than half a mile per second, or over Mach 2, the enemy radar operator still has little time to react. So this looks like I'd say that's a HARM, that's probably a Shrike, that's an infrared Maverick, or laser Maverick. Let's see if I got it right. A view from top to bottom: AGM-88 HARM, the AGM-45 Shrike anti-radiation missile, and the AGM-65 Maverick infrared guided missile. Infrared imaging guided missile. Yeah, IR Maverick. So these two go on the radar spectrum. This is on the infrared spectrum. I'd never known that the infrared Maverick would be used against radars. Okay, so that's a good description of what goes on. All right, so back to this. That's kind of a description. SED is a SED mission. SEAD, suppression of air defense and destruction of air defense. So suppression means you just keep it from working. You don't necessarily destroy it. There are a variety of ways to do that, I guess. Sometimes the threat of it being killed is enough to suppress it from being turned on. All right, so now let me clean up some of this here. And I wanted to see how it's going to use this. I'll clean this up. And get rid of that. And I lost that beautiful article that I was looking for. Oh yeah, how Ukraine could have used it. So this is just talking about all of it. And so it was saying, I think, okay, so it looks like the Ukrainians have been able to integrate the missile, their electronics, to be able to launch these missiles. We previously speculated that the basic harm functionality could be relatively crudely implemented on any one of Ukraine's combat aircraft types by leveraging a federated interface such as an e-tablet. As long as an appropriate pylon could be furnished from which to hang the missile, this approach could theoretically bypass the aircraft's existing Soviet-era weapons interface. Then even possibly via a Bluetooth-like connection, the pilot could operate the missile from the cockpit, but even that may not be necessary in order to use harm in at least its most basic modes. The original harm is associated with three main modes of operation, though it's not immediately clear whether all versions, AGM-88A to D, offered all modes, and later versions of the missile certainly introduced new modes and expanded the capabilities within existing modes. First is the self-protect mode, in which harm is fired by an aircraft once it detects a threat. Typically, the launch aircraft would be flying near a hostile air defense network when a ground radar powers up, perhaps even locking onto it or potentially other friendly aircraft. The aircraft would normally be alerted to the hostile radar signal by the onboard threat receiver of some kind, which could be a more basic radar warning receiver or specialized equipment like the F-16's Harm Targeting System, HTS, or a highly integrated modern digital defensive suite. Man, things have changed in the 30 years since I was working with this technology. This is stuff I didn't have. Dang. We had, on the stuff that I was flying simulated, we had this ALR 67 and this radar warning receiver and the ALR 67. And you'd see the targets on the ALR 67. Let me see if I could show you this. ALR 67 is beautiful. Yep, here it is. Let me show it to you on Wikipedia. The AN ALR 67 radar warning receiver. Let's see if they have a picture of it. The AN ALR 67 radar warning receiver is designed to warn an aircraft's crew of potentially hostile radar activity. It's an airborne threat warning and countermeasures control system built to the successor to the Navy's AN ALR 45. Northrop Grumman Corporation's electronic systems sector, Rolling Meadows, Illinois, was the main contractor. And Raytheon was Raytheon did the V3. So we had the V, the V2, and the V3. The system also coordinates its operation with onboard fire control radars, data links, jammers, missile detection systems, and anti-radiation missiles. Oh man, this is beautiful. Let's see if they have a picture of the ALR 67 display. Yeah, that's it, baby. That's what the ALR 67 looked like. Dang, all the memories. Oh, man. You see here? These little dots are the threats that they just come up on there. That is so cool. Man. And so, oh man. So when you designate a target that you want to whack, you click and fire. You click and whack. Yeah, you click it and whack it. Yeah, baby. Long time. So that was the aircraft I work with. The A6 Intruder. It may look ugly, but she did her job, man. It's not a thing of beauty. But she did her job. And so you had this there it is, the AN ALR 67 radar warning receiver. And you can see all the sorts of threats here. And they're codings for what these threats are. It would tell you what they were. And you could kind of just select and then shoot at them. Yeah. So anyway, we have these, that's an F-16 with these harms, but they're able to put them on MiGs now. And they can knock out the radars. So going back to this scenario here, the Ukrainian Air Force has to come up here, start to knock out the radar systems, kind of blind the radar systems that control the surface-to-air missiles. When the surface-to-air missiles are now disabled, you could fly in these bombers that they don't have to be very expensive. And here's a little bit of Armchair Field Marshal. You don't need a very sophisticated airplane to drop a bomb. It doesn't have to be these $100 million stealth airplanes. It could be a dirt cheap one. It just has to have the altitude, and it has to have the electronics put into it that can tell it, okay, you can program the bomb for the target, and then it'll direct you to where to fly to, what the optimal point is to drop, and then you drop it. And so you just fly out here from some airfield, way out here to the left. You fly up here. You don't even get anywhere near the Russian lines, and you drop your bomb, and then you turn, you hit the deck, and you fly low. So even what you may do is you may fly low, and then you just pop up at the last moment. Although to climb up to really high altitudes is going to take a while. But let's say you're able to get up nice and high. You drop your bomb here, and then you just hit the deck, and you fly back at low altitude. And then your bomb drops here. In the meantime, your buddies are just lurking around, launching HARM missiles. And it's going to knock out the surface-to-air batteries. Let's see. So there's these Russian shoulder-fired missiles, and the SAM-7. So let's see, there's one called the Igla. Strela 3. Range is 5 kilometers. So we have these little man pads. Yeah. You can fly high. You actually, if you're on a HARM mission, you sort of want to at least send up decoys that'll fly high. So you could send up some cheap airplanes to be basically cannon fodder and cause the Russians to turn on their radars. Preferably use just a decoy aircraft, like, maybe a drone or something that's unmanned. Let them turn on their radars, and then you have the low-flying HARM missile carriers like the MiG-29s, the Ukrainian MiG-29s, come in there low, pop up and shoot their missiles. I saw videos of this. The Ukrainian Defense Forces were showing video of what the launch looked like. It was awesome. You'd fly in low, then you do a pop-up maneuver. So you fly in low, you get up a lot of speed, and then when you turn up and you shoot high, the missile will take an arc like that and then come back down and knock out the radar. At high altitude, you can get about 80. You could do this from 80 kilometers. You'd have to be gutsy to do that, to be flying high deliberately, because they may be able to get you when you're flying high like that. So you fly low, you pop up. So I would guess they could probably fly low. They could be 20 kilometers from the Russian lines, and therefore they would be immune to the man pads of the Russians. They could pop up at the last minute and launch their HARMs, provided the decoys are flying high enough to start getting the Russians to turn on their radars. And once they turn on their radars, the Ukrainians can start popping up their airplanes and launching their HARM missiles. Now, I guess they could get up at altitude if their decoys are over there and the Russians are already starting to fire. Then yeah, if you have enough of those drones, they'll be so preoccupied trying to shoot down the drones, you might be able to get off a lucky shot from 80 kilometers away. So let's look at this diagram and see how far 80 kilometers is. So the Russian lines are there. 80 kilometers is about there. Oh yeah, you'll be able to do it. If they had the radars here, you'll be able to do that. So you could probably get up close. Yeah, you could still be 40 kilometers. That looks like about 40 kilometers from the Russian lines, and you're launching. Yeah, you might have a chance. You're launching at harm targets 80 kilometers behind 80 kilometers away from you. At least you might have some chance to dive down, hit the deck, and try to run away at low altitude. So I've been trying to find out how many S-300 radars have the Ukrainians destroyed. I haven't gotten figures on that. I think they don't really want to talk about how badly they may have degraded the Russian air defense system. So in sum, let me just close out here. That's just kind of, I just wanted to muse for the last 2 hours on these munitions. If you command the airspace and you have weapons like JDAM and you have a large amounts of them, the way the Russians are fighting with their human wave tactics, it could be really easy pickings. You don't even need to get your airplanes to fly low altitude missions at all. It could be standoff distances, and it could be just brutal. I mean, why should the U.S., and it kind of bothers me, why should they be sending all this sophisticated military equipment when you could use kind of relatively lower sophistication, much more cost effective given the way the Russians deploy their formations, and you just bomb them into oblivion. You may not have to engage them up close. You have all the drones, you have the satellite images, you know where they are. Trench warfare of this is World War I trench warfare. If you know where the trenches are, you have the GPS coordinates, it's easy. You just send the airplanes there, drop the JDAMs from 80 kilometers away. 80 kilometers away. If you suppress the air defenses or destroy them, these dead attacks, you're not going to get shot down. The Russians also are, conversely, because the Ukrainians still have their air defense and getting better, the Russians aren't going to be flying their airplanes to intercept your bombers. So depending on how the Ukrainians want to do this, and if only the Western allies would really supply them with more high-tech stuff, it could be done cheaply, cost-effectively. But an argument has been made. They don't really want to let the Russians. They don't want to escalate because the Russians keep threatening nuclear war, and so there's some incentive to actually not allow the Ukrainians to prosecute the war quite too effectively. And I'm sorry to say that they don't really want to, they don't want to the Ukrainians beat up on the Russians too badly, because, they are kind of concerned. They don't want Putin to kind of go off the rails with nuclear weapons. But remember, when you had the technological advantage and the skill and the training, look like what happened in the Gulf War. The Allies won 3,000 to nothing in terms of the number of tanks they wiped out. They killed tens of thousands of Iraqis at a loss to only in the ballpark of 100 of their own killed in action. This was like a slaughter. I'm very sorry for the Iraqis, but this is sadly, if you fight a war that you feel is just, there's going to be some ugly stuff. So that's really all I had, and I know I probably bored everyone to death, but I just wanted to get something off my chest, something I've been fascinated by. We have our friend Mr. Jetty89 who lives in Ukraine, and I'm rooting for him, and so he comes to mind. So anyway, glory and honor to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. May there be peace on earth as he has commanded us to pray, but he knows, he's warned us there will be wars and rumors of wars, and before he returns. But anyway, it was a pleasure spending the afternoon talking with you all about all this stuff. And I'll close out with some music. Take care and God bless you.
Could only find a voice.